Peace, family. This is Ayapo Yapa. This is the Draped Maniac podcast, and I am the HDIC, the head Draped Maniac in charge. And today, I'd like to have a discussion and have my beautiful wife join in with me, if she would do that. She's sitting in another place in the room, and she's just now finding out that I want her to join in. Would you be open to that?
Sure.
Here, come on over. Well, this is Angela. She's gracious enough to join in on the conversation with me today. She doesn't even know what I'm going to talk about. But I just heard, I was listening to Gab Talk Media, and he mentioned something about SYSBM, and I had never heard of it. It's Save Yourself Black Man. And I had never heard of it. And evidently, Angela had never heard of it either. But I just wanted to have a short discussion just about this whole black man, black woman thing. Recently in the news, you have this white woman propose to a black man. I don't remember their names because I don't follow that. Who was that?
I don't know. I think they were both athletes or something, but I don't recall. I don't know. I didn't know who they were before.
Okay. But they're, she had proposed to him, and he accepted, and that was a big news story. And then there was the black woman who married the white man from I think it was, some say it's Dawson's Creek, and some say it was Fringe. I think it might have been on both. But I've heard a couple conversations that pointed to basically when you have these black men who get so upset about this black woman, the dark-skinned black woman, marrying this white guy, but then it seems like nothing's said about this black man accepting this proposal from this white woman. And to that degree, it does smack of hypocrisy. But I have a couple thoughts about it. But before I start, I just wanted to hear what you have to say.
Well, I mean, I hear sometimes social media people say, oh, well, that's hypocrisy because, you have all this to say when it goes this way, but you don't have anything to say when it goes the other way. And it kind of confuses me because when I'm watching social media or when people are making comments, I don't follow their comments to know if they're being hypocrites or not. Maybe they make the same comments on both types of situations. I don't really know. So, I guess in terms of hypocrisy, I don't really know. In terms of, black people idolizing whiteness, just like white people idolize whiteness, I feel like we're basically just living out our training and our programming. And any of us who aren't, of that mindset or are of that mindset to a lesser degree and hopefully lesser and lesser and lesser and getting lesser, is just kind of like by the grace of God, there goes me. That's how I look at it. Like, I feel like I've escaped, a bunch of stuff, and I feel like I have a whole bunch more stuff to escape. But when I look at somebody who hasn't escaped, I don't feel like, oh, well, I'm mad at them because they haven't escaped their programming. I feel like I'm just grateful that I have escaped, some of it, and I hope to escape more of it.
Right, I hear you. My angle, and we have a lot of discussions about this type of thing, but my angle is, as I start to hear about it, if you do have black men who hear about a situation with a black woman marrying a white man, and then they're all over that, but they don't have anything to say about a black man marrying a white woman, and vice versa. When you have black women who hear about black men getting with white women, and they have all this stuff to say, and then basically give a pass to black women marrying white men or creating excuses for it. And this is on both sides. I submit, because this whole thing for me is about being pro-black. When I listen to pro-black men and pro-black women who are truly pro-black, they ain't having it from either side. They don't lean far to this side or far to that side. They're equal, not in their disdain, but they're equal in what they have to say about it. And honestly, a lot of what I hear, I agree with, where they're saying, if you want to swirl, go on and swirl. The problem is, if you want to swirl, if you're a man, don't blame black women because you want to swirl. Or if you're a black woman, don't blame black men because you decide to swirl. That's a decision that you're making. If that's your decision, go do you. But you don't have to dog us out and call black women bulldogs and all this crap. For example, if you want to swirl, then just go on swirl. You don't have to dog our own people out. So, to that degree, when you're dealing with people, see, I guess my thing is that we try to throw everybody into this pro-black pot just because you have people who talk like they're pro-black in different areas. When you start getting down to where the rubber meets the road, then everybody who's saying they're pro-black isn't pro-black, and some people just openly say that they're not pro-black. So don't put that on pro-black people. Also, what you said, Angela, is extremely important. You can't tell grown folk what to do. You can't tell grown folk what to do. But in leading by example, we have all these young people coming up, and it's kind of a situation, and this is my way of seeing it. You have a situation where we have young people coming up, and they're watching daddy and mommy fighting. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And they're like, okay, so what's what?
Mm-hmm. So are you saying that because the young people are watching daddy and mommy fight, then daddy and mommy have to do better and not fight? Or, I don't understand what point you're making.
Well, daddy and mommy have to do better and not be fighting each other, dogging each other out and stuff. You know what I mean?
I feel like
I said stuff. But go on.
Yeah. I feel like it's kind of like a couple things. Like, even though we were talking the other day about the fact that, it's kind of confusing on one hand in terms of why, white people seem to be so angry. And mm-hmm. It's like you're winning. If you set the game up for you to win, this is your game. You're winning according to your value system and your belief system and within the context of your system. Mm-hmm. So why are you so angry? And then we were talking about them being frustrated because, for various reasons, no matter how hard they try to dog us out and steal what's ours and, replace us, that hasn't really happened in the way that they visualize it. Is probably most likely what's leading to their frustration. But on the other side of it, I kind of feel like there's this thing of, you're like, well, black daddy and mommy can't fight. But I feel like black daddy and mommy are under a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. Black daddy and mommy are constantly being fed information about how black daddy and mommy ain't SHIT. Black daddy and mommy are constantly, stressed about food, stressed about, how to take care of their children, stressed about the education of their children. Mm-hmm. Black daddy and mommy, even when they're wealthy, their children go to schools where, children and teachers explicitly call them NIGER, and implicitly, you don't know what all kinds of stuff black daddy and mommy's children have been exposed to. The black daddy and mommy may not be consciously dealing with, may not know how to consciously deal with, because they don't know what else to do other than send their children to the quote unquote, best schools. Black daddy and mommy, whether they're, financially challenged or not, even if they're not financially challenged, they probably at work looking at their colleagues making more money than them and doing less work. And, so it's kind of like, it's no wonder or no surprise to me that black daddy and mommy got issues with each other. Everything in the society is like, white is better. So black daddy and mommy, it's like, it's to maintain any sort of love and respect toward your black self. So we lost my husband for now. He had to go deal with something with his car. But I feel like, as a people, I think I already said this, but, as individuals, as families and communities, for us to love ourselves and see ourselves and value ourselves and enjoy ourselves and feel free to be ourselves is it's a thing. It's more than a notion. I mean, it's easy to say, get some self-esteem, love yourself, black love, be with black people. But I feel like, it's really more than a notion. And, it was something else that I wanted to speak to as well. Looping back in terms of black men and black women. And, I kind of feel like in the same way that you can't make an equivalency between, well, black people need to love themselves, white people, black mommy and black daddy shouldn't be fighting. I feel like, well, black people are under a different kind of pressure than white people. And so I feel like I try to take that into account when I'm analyzing things, when I'm looking at things, when I'm trying to understand things. And I feel like the same way when I look at black men and black women. Now, I might be, biased, and I guess that I am biased as a black woman, as a dark-skinned black woman. I guess there's a way that I've come to see and experience the world that, may or may not be true for anyone else. And, but I kind of feel like as a dark-skinned black woman, you are at the bottom of the hierarchy. Now, I think that there are some exceptions to the rule. I think that if people consider you to be exceptionally beautiful, you might not be at the bottom of the hierarchy, but, you're still not at the top for the most part of anybody's hierarchy. And so I feel like it gets lonely out here, for dark-skinned black women. I can't. And so I feel like when you're talking about, the choices, when I'm looking at the choices that black men make and the choices that black women make, I'm actually looking at them differently. It's not that I think that like, oh, I don't really think that much about, interracial relationships or other people's relationships, because I feel like it's a full-time job and an occupation just to manage and deal with and understand, my own relationships with my loved ones, my family, my colleagues. I mean, I got a whole job just dealing with the relationships that I'm personally involved with, let alone trying to understand other people's relationships. But when I do think about them, I just think when I look at black men who are dealing with, white women, and to me it's on the same continuum as black men who are dealing with light-skinned women. I feel like as a dark-skinned black woman, there are some parties that I'm just not invited to, and I mean, I feel like when you're dealing and dating with anybody, everybody is not attracted to everybody. So anybody and everybody is not a potential mate for you, period. But I definitely feel like as a dark-skinned black woman, that there are certain dating opportunities. I don't really know if opportunity is the word, but there are certain people who are just not going to be checking for me. And I think I've said this before, like on my YouTube channel or whatever. I know it in real life. It's some people who look at me. I mean, I'm not as skinny as I used to be, but when they look at me, I'm just too skinny for them. They're not interested. They're not attracted at all. When they look at me, they see my glasses. They're not interested. They're not attracted at all. When they look at me, they see my dark skin. They're not interested. They're not attracted to me at all. When they look at me and they see my nappy hair, they're not interested. They're just not attracted at all. And I feel like, my dating world and the dating prospects and the things that I've had as an option are much more constricted than, one of my sister friends growing up was light skinned. She was really heavy chested. Her curl pattern was a little looser. She's an attractive woman and I'm an attractive woman, but I feel like her dating options were different from mine. If we walked into a room and there were 100 men there were probably, 40, 50, 60 men who were interested in her, whereas there might have been 20 men who might have been interested in me. Like she just had more options. Now, in terms of, her skill and ability to filter out those options, and probably because of the way I grew up and because I had to observe a lot or got to observe a lot because people weren't jumping all over me. So I got to observe a lot, and, I've learned to be very selective in relationships. And so I feel like, my ability to filter out relationships might have been stronger than her ability. But I feel like in raw numbers, she had way more options than me. And I kind of feel like, so when you look at a dark-skinned black woman, like, I feel like the lighter you are toward whiteness, the more options you have as a woman. That's just how I feel. And I don't feel like that's necessarily the case for men. Now, I think that my husband would argue and say that, you know, it's the same for men. The darker you are, the less options you have. Everything that dark-skinned black women feel and go through, dark-skinned black men, you know, feel and go through the same time. Maybe he doesn't feel like it's to the same degree, but he feels that they have the exact same experience. And maybe he doesn't feel that way. And maybe I'm misunderstanding or misrepresenting. But, you know, when I'm looking at, you know, interracial couples, I'm not looking at black men and black women as the same in terms of, you know, the options that are out there, and, you know, possibilities that they have for mates. So, you know, and again, not that I'm like, you know, I'm not really for or against anybody else's relationship, I guess. I mean, it's just like, it's kind of hard for me to care, with specific relationships. I think I care more about the general principle, and I think that I care more about the long term, how do we turn it around? The long term, how do we come to love ourselves individually? What is, you know, what has been my personal process for coming to love and accept myself? Because, you know, there was definitely a time when I went to bed every night and I was praying that, you know, if I couldn't at least wake up with light skin, could I have just long, straight hair, God, please? You know, like, from me going from that as a child who really didn't grow up. I mean, you know, if I look at the household that I grew up in, you know, I don't think that that was a message that I got from my mother or my father, but I certainly got that message, and I got that message loud and clear and deep, you know, that, you know, my value was less than, and, you know, my worth was less than. And so how my personal path from hating myself to loving myself, and that's something that I'm really interested in. You know, how do we, you know, as individuals, as families, as communities, come to love and accept ourselves? How do we as individuals and families and communities come to know and embrace and value ourselves? How do we as individuals and families and communities get free of this bullshit about who we are and who we aren't, and what we're worth and what we aren't worth? You know, how do we, you know, how do we progress? How do we progress? How do we move forward? So I think that, you know, in the abstract, in terms of, you know, of us learning to love our black selves, and by extension loving black one another, and the power of black love, and just like there's a power in loving yourself, black love, that's like a continuum of loving yourself. If you ain't loving yourself and valuing yourself and seeing the beauty and the power and the oomph in who you are, then that's deep. And I feel like that's us. It's deep. It's some serious work that we have to do. Now, whether Sally get with Jamal or Jamal get with Sally, I don't really know too much about that. But looping back to that original story that we were talking about, or not, I don't know if it was the original, but one of the stories we were talking about, because of what Ayapo has mentioned, when I saw the story, I saw it on the evening news because I'm a little bit under the weather, and so I was watching TV. I don't really watch that much TV. But I just wanted something playing in the background, and you know, instead of my YouTube where I have to select, it was too much work for me because I was sick. But so anyway, I was watching the evening news, and not only did the white woman propose to the black man, but she gave him a ring. And in the story, actually, it was just like they showed the white woman, and they were like, you know, she proposed to her fiance, and, you know, then they had a shot of her saying, you know, I believe in equality, and then they shot to her dark-skinned black fiance, and I was kind of like, oh, so it was kind of like the equality, from the feminist perspective, and then equality from the racism perspective, or race perspective, or whatever. It was just an interesting dynamic. But what I don't really care. I mean, I feel like I don't want to say that people are ruined by the time they grown, they ruin, we can't be fixed, because I don't necessarily believe that. I feel like if you do a lot of work on yourself, you can get free of certain things. But I feel like it requires a lot of work. I feel like the older you are, the harder it is to escape certain things. You can escape certain things, but it requires a lot of work. And so I feel like when I'm looking at grown people, I just kind of feel like, and even when I deal with young people, because I used to run youth programs, it's like dealing with young people and trying to tease apart their belief systems and trying to impart certain ideas in them and try to like encourage them to live a certain way and to be a way and honor themselves and honor other people and respect themselves and respect other people and know themselves. Like, that's more than a notion. That's a big job right there with children. When you're dealing with adults, I'm like, that's a whole nother thing. You know, like, there's a lot more to tease out, and there's a lot more to escape from, and there's a lot more to get free from. But when I saw that story about that couple, what was interesting to me, because of some stuff that Ayapo had said, is that I thought that even though I don't necessarily buy into this concept wholeheartedly or, you know, deeply, I haven't thought much about it. But, you know, the man has to buy the woman the ring. In the context of the society, the masculine thing to do in the context of the American society is to buy an engagement ring for the woman that you're going to marry. And so when you have a white woman buying an engagement ring for the black man that she's going to marry, I just thought it had him in the feminine role in the context of this society's value system, in the context of this society's roles and mores. So that's what was kind of interesting to me about that. So yeah, that's I guess that's all I have to say. I don't know how long I've been talking, and if I really, yeah. Shoot, if we had 24 minutes, it might be something to cut from and edit from. But yeah, I don't know if I'm the head. I don't want to be the HDIC. I'm definitely, you know, the queen of freedom and love me some freedom and want to get free. And, you know, I want you to be free. I want you to be free of anything that is not you and is not true. And I want you to freely be engaged in and involved with and connected to and in love with all things that are you and are true, and affirm your goodness and your godness and the truth of your divinity and the service that you have come to provide to the world. So, you know, I want you to be free to be fully and fabulously who you are. So that's it. Be you, be fabulous, be fabulous you. Peace.
Okay, and I'm back, and I want to pick up where my wife left off. She has left the room now, and it's just me. Anyway, I want to loop back to something she said about the differences between how dark-skinned black women experience colorism and the way the dark-skinned black men experience colorism. And we have had the conversation before. And, you know, there are many dark-skinned black men who say, you know, we have to deal with the effects of colorism just as much as dark-skinned black women do. And we're talking about in terms of the dating process or who's checking for you and so on. Now, I will admit that to my eye, it doesn't seem as pronounced for black men. It doesn't seem like it happens as much to black men. But it is significant enough that it is a thing. It is a thing, and there are many of us out here who have the stories. I have story after story after story of dark-skinned black women who didn't want anything to do with me because I was dark, and they were looking for someone light-skinned. You know, you gotta remember, I grew up in the DeBarge era. You know. And so, you know, it was always these like Latino looking men or light skinned men and so on that women that you know, young ladies you know, at that time were checking for, and it wasn't us dark skinned black men. That's not saying that it didn't happen, but another thing is if I've said it once, I've said it a million times, is if you have a group of people telling you something en masse, then you really should listen to what they're saying and honor what they're saying. That's why I don't like it when black men dismiss things that our women are trying to tell us en masse, because evidently there's something to it, and there's no way that we can know, or there's no way for us to really just dismiss it, because how could we know, So, and the same thing goes for us when we're telling our women something en masse, and it's being dismissed. And our women are saying, oh, you don't really go through that. My question always becomes, how can you possibly know that when you have us telling you what's happening to us, and vice versa? Women could say to us, how could you possibly know that? You're not a woman. You're not a black woman. You're not a dark-skinned black woman, and so on. Anyway, I had looped back and I listened to what Angela had to say, and for the most part, I agree with her. Her and I don't see eye to eye on every single thing, but we always respectfully listen to each other, and we consider what each other has to say. Sometimes we think about it and say, yeah, you know what, you have a point. Sometimes we think about it and say, yeah, well, we'll just have to agree to disagree. But I think that's the place that our men and women need to be in anyway. Nobody's going to agree on everything. I find it highly suspect when you come across someone who agrees with everything that you have to say. That's suspect to me. So anyway, I'm not going to drag this out any further. I really appreciate what Angela had to say. She had like a lot of good words of wisdom, and that's about it. This is the Drake the Maniac podcast. Be sure and check us out at doayamedia.com. There you can find Up Magazine, Unapologetically Pro-Black Magazine. That's the magazine of the pro-black community. We're presently working on issue 2. That issue will be coming out on February 1st, the second issue. And it's just going to be chock full of information and entertainment too, for our people, for the pro-black community. Also, continue to look at UPTV. I finally uploaded something to Ayapo Yapa Deep Thoughts on there, so go to and check that out. I'll leave the link at the bottom so you can get straight to it. And don't forget to visit the Doaya Media store and get your Doaya Media gear. There's plenty there, and just throughout the site itself. It's a very robust site, and we're constantly updating it. So just keep checking back, and we're sure that you'll find something that will be helpful to you, something that will be of assistance to you and enlightening to you. And don't forget to sign our guest book. Give us any kind of constructive criticism or constructive ideas that you have. And also, when you go to the site, you can hear past episodes of the Drake the Maniac podcast. This one is longer than most. Typically, the Drake the Maniac podcast only lasts between like 15-20 minutes. But this one went long, and I think it was a good one. So anyway, this is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, head Drake the Maniac in charge, and I will see you on the run.